know, a share certificate is not proof of ownership, and in the event of transfer of the property, you cannot use a share certificate. What usually happens in the event of group ownership is they have different ownership structures that they put in place to acquire or dispose of property. So in some instances, you find an individual buying property on their own, an individual buying property through a chama, or a chama decides to buy property, or you buy property through a company. So your unit of ownership in that company would be a share, which will directly reflect or indicate you as an owner to that property. So in that instance, the company will issue with a share certificate, but that share certificate is not a direct indication of the title document you have for the property. So the property will be registered under the company or under the legal person or legal entity, but your ownership is reflected through the ownership structure of that entity as a company member or a member of a chama. Capital gains tax is paid by the person who is selling the property. The way you arrive at capital gains tax is you look at the price of the property at the time you acquired it and the costs incurred during that time. You also look at the current price at which you are disposing that property, in other words, at which you're selling that property, and the additional costs that you're incurring with respect to selling that property, costs like agency fees, legal fees. So you will do a deduction of those costs, and 5% from the net deduction will be a capital gains tax. So why is capital gains tax necessary? Besides being an obligation, a mandatory obligation from the government, as a tax obligation from the government for a person who's selling the property, a seller, or rather a buyer, is unable to pay stamp duty unless they've received a capital gains tax acknowledgement form from the seller. So a seller needs to provide proof of payment of capital gains tax, which would facilitate someone who is buying to pay stamp duty. So stamp duty is a duty or a tax that is payable by the person who is buying or acquiring the property. Now, stamp duty varies from property to property, and the rate at which it's calculated depends on whether the property is within a municipality area or out of a municipality area. So where property is within a municipality area, stamp duty is going to be 4% of the value of the property. Where property is out of a municipality area, stamp duty will be at 2% of the value of the property. Now, when I refer to value of the property, I don't mean the value at which you've negotiated with the person who is selling the property. It is the value that has been ascertained by a government valuer as the value of the property that you are purchasing. So there are exemptions to the payment of stamp duty, and the Stamp Duty Act provides for different transactions that have been exempted from stamp duty. For example, where you are inheriting property and that property is passing on to you, you are not required to pay stamp duty emanating from that transaction. It's just a nominal value that is paid at the stamp duty level. Where the property is being transferred from spouse to spouse, stamp duty, that property is also exempt from stamp duty payment. Where you are transferring property from a family-owned company to a member of the family, there is also an exemption on stamp duty. An exemption on stamp duty typically means that you are waiving payment of stamp duty. So to get an exemption from stamp duty, you need to make an application for exemption of stamp duty from the collector of stamp duty at the Ministry of Lands. It's essential as a property owner to ensure that you are up to date on your payments for land rent and land rates. These are fees that are payable to the government or the county, the national government and the county government from time to time. Indeed, when you're going to transfer any property, it is essential that one of the completion documents that constitutes the transfer are land rent clearance certificates and the land rates clearance certificate.